Hey people, this is DJ.
And this is Ish.
And
this
this
is
is
season
season
4
4
of
of
Pero Let Me Tell You.
Today I saw a really nice moment.
What?
So I went to turn in my car today. My lease was over, so I went
Yes.
to hand it in. I was very sad, by the way. Anyway, I was at Planet Dodge, and
Is that before or after Pluto?
Planet Dodge. Well, no, Pluto doesn't exist anymore. It's not a planet.
So replace Pluto.
So there you go. You thought about Pluto when I said planet, and you shouldn't.
It's a planet.
Anyway, so as I was walking out, and everybody, welcome to episode
148.
148.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, we're
148.
almost at 150.
I know. We've got our special guest coming up in 2 episodes.
And we should have a totally fake party that we were gonna have for our 100th episode.
well, that's why we're having the special guest. So we
so
can at
wait,
least,
so we didn't have the 100th episode because of because COVID was starting.
Correct.
So 50 episodes later, we're still dealing with the COVID.
Actually,
a
this
year.
week is a year.
Yeah, a year of COVID. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yes.
But so I was at the dealer and I had just turned in my car, and they're at Planet Dodge. They have like an area where they give you you stand there and they drive your brand new car or whatever, or car that you're getting. And there was this older gentleman, and it was like one of these like older guys that you could tell has like worked a lot, like un obrero,
Right.
Whatever, one of these type of guys,
Blue collar.
Yes, we always have, un tío or whatever in our family. I see that has worked, has the hands, like I see. And he actually started to cry.
Why?
And right when I was walking by, he's like, yo nunca he tenido un carro nuevo. And I felt so like bad, but then so like, oh, so nice. Like, and he had just gotten a Jeep. Actually, it was a Jeep Cherokee, the regular one, in navy blue. Like, that's how I know it sounds like navy blue. But anyway, I was like, oh, what a nice moment. Like, this man has worked so hard. You could tell, and he's like, I never had a new car. And you know what I think about? Like, seriously speaking, if you come from another country and you're an immigrant, and you left your country because things are not well there.
Right, for a reason. Yeah.
Even if you're not a person that's about material things, I think that buying a new car is like...
There's a certain level of a wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I have a cousin of mine, you know my cousin, that he's already been in the US like 7 years, and he's 26. And he's worked.
He's a kid, yeah.
He's worked really hard since he's been here. He has like a good job now, and he bought himself a brand new BMW. And some people are like, oh, he shouldn't be spending money on that. There's smart. And I'm like, you know what? That kid had nothing in Cuba.
Exactly.
So you know what? He came here. He's working hard. He could pay for it. It's not like somebody else is paying for it, or he's making the money illegally.
Right.
It's like, what? If he wants to, he's freaking 25, 26 years old. Let him buy the freaking BMW.
Que se den gustazo.
Que después, something else in life comes around, whatever. Anyway, welcome to episode 148, everybody. Now that we are on that rant.
Now that you had that rant going.
The point is that buying a new car, even though if it's something material, can be an accomplishment.
Of course it is, because it means that you've worked hard.
Yeah,
to achieve that.
Whether it was a goal that you had to be able to afford an expensive car, or just a goal that you had to just have any car,
right?
Any new car. Like, I remember
especially
the first
here in
time,
South Florida, you can't not have a car.
Yeah, the very first car my parents bought, I'll never forget what it was. It was a 1985 Ford Tempo in white. It was brand new, and I was a small kid. Like I was a little kid. But I remember, and my parents, like everybody that comes to this country, tienen un transportation. The first few years.
Yeah.
Right? Para resolver. And my parents had a whole, terrible cars for like the first 5 or 6 years that they were here, right? But then, when they were able to afford a new car, it was just a Ford Tempo, but nonetheless, a new car. Like, I remember what a big deal it was.
Yeah.
That my mom ponía toallas in the back. Para no ensuciar los de eso. And they had sun visors everywhere para no descolorar la tela.
That's right.
So, yeah.
That's right.
So, new cars, everybody.
Listen, it's like you said, uno viene aquí para pa lograr. You know what I mean? Like, and when you do, it should be celebrated, whatever it is.
And whatever
as long as it's legal, and as long as it's something, not putting you in jail, then yes, let's celebrate their goals.
Yeah. So how is everybody?
I think
Happy Friday.
I think everybody's doing all right, considering that I think this week was officially like the U.S. official week where we celebrated the year of COVID, as it were.
The year of COVID. I say BC, before COVID.
Yes. So yes, that we're now AC. It's later. It's weird. It's wild to think that I've been working at home for a year now.
Yeah. I feel that it's going to be a while. It's going to be several years before it happens. But I think that for humanity, I think maybe in 10, 15 years, we're going to think of the past as BC, before COVID and after COVID. Yeah. Because, we talk about how much the world has changed in a year, but I think that we're not going to obviously see the long-term effects of how the world has changed
for a while. And
I think that right now we're kind of, since we're living it in the moment, we're kind of in this in-between phase.
Right.
There's certain aspects that are back to normal, but then there's certain aspects that are not.
Right. We feel okay going to a restaurant, but not to a bar.
Right. But even when you go to a restaurant, you're like, oh, are there too many people?
Right.
Which things that you hadn't thought about today?
We're going to an outdoor concert.
Yeah.
But not an indoor concert. Things like that.
For example, today when I was dealing the thing with the car, I had to sign some paperwork. And it was in a regular office, but there was 4 people in that office. Right. And the guy was like, oh, please come outside to the main lobby area to sign this because there's too many people in this office.
Right.
Whereas, before but I think that, in the future, it's, in several years into the future, while this is behind us, we're going to see the world before COVID and after COVID. And obviously there's going to be a reference as to the COVID years. And, pero for some people, this week was okay because we got some stimmy money.
That's right. We got some,
oh my God.
We got a check,
actually,
babe.
I have a really funny story about the stimulus.
Okay.
Yesterday.
I love the timing that it came on St. Patrick's Day, by the way.
No, yesterday, I look outside and there was somebody delivering a Peloton. And I'm like, something to my front door neighbor. I'm like, somebody got their stimulus money.
That stimulus check came and went in the same hour.
En el Peloton. Se compraron un Peloton.
Se fue en un Peloton.
I have to say, I can't say Peloton. I say Peloton.
Peloton. And it sounds kind of dirty.
Yeah, no, I say Peloton, but it doesn't come out naturally.
No. I may say Peloton, but when I read it, for sure, every time I read it, it's Peloton.
Do you know that a couple of weeks ago, I almost had a brain fart and I actually thought about buying one. And then I'm like, what the fuck are you doing?
Where in hell would you put it?
Because, no, I have room to put it. But here's the thing. Because I was at Merrick Park.
Also, you have a bike.
Well, let me explain to you. I was at Merrick Park, right? And there was a sale.
Okay.
And they were like, oh, you can own a Peloton for $30 a month,
for
right?
How many months, yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, I'm not paying for the gym right now because I haven't gone back to the gym.
That's right.
My gym actually was more than $30 a month. And I'm like, maybe it's worth it, right? But then I'm like, wait, no, that's another bill. And I'm not going to have another freaking bill. But then that $30 a month doesn't include the classes.
Oh, no, that's just for the machine, my friend.
That's just for the machine. It doesn't include the shoes, which you have to buy. And then the classes, there's different tiers. Yep. If you get classes in their vaults, there's one tier, and then there's the pre-recorded one, then it's the live ones. I want to do the live ones. If I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna go all in. But a lot of people love it. Look, one of our listeners, Leslie in Austin, and I'm sorry, in
Texas?
Chico, where does
I have no idea where
San Antonio. I was thinking the mall with the river. San Antonio. She loves the Peloton, right. And a lot of people really like it. It's very much a lifestyle. And I've seen the whole thing with the videos. And have you ever seen the videos?
No.
I've seen the videos. They're totally, whatever it is, it works. you.
There's a reason people are buying it.
You think you're gonna climb Mount Everest But then I was like, espérate. En los $30 al menos incluye el video. Ah, no, entonces ¿para qué?
It includes just the machine.
Just the machine. So
Just the machine.
I'm like, this is deceptive advertising.
I mean, I'm sure there's fine print.
¿Qué hago yo con la bicicleta sin el video? Like, what, the huge screen is turned off?
And again, you have a bicycle. So it's not even like, bueno, no tengo una bicicleta.
Right, no. And I love my bike.
Right.
And I love my bike. But the thing is, biking, like, we've talked about it here in the show. I've taken up riding. You know, I'm already doing like 30 miles.
Right. Which, by the way, te compadezco, because when I did that pedicab thing last week, oh man, I could barely walk home afterwards.
Yeah, but you were carrying a whole, like...
That's true. At one point, I carried 2 adults.
Yeah, with lights. But biking, you know, it has to be at a certain time of the day, and it can be raining, and you know...
That's true, and we live in South Florida.
Right.
So
I'm like, oh, you know, this is great. But then I'm like, no. Hay que pagar más por video. You don't necesito... Like, I snapped out of it in a second.
You came and went.
Yeah, I was like, no, stop it. and I hadn't received the stimulus money.
Oh, so, okay. That may be a good thing.
But I look outside, and I'm like, that's a Peloton. I'm like, oh, they got their stimulus money.
That stimulus...
Their last name starts with A.
That stimulus got stimulated.
But no, you know, I love all the stimulus memes.
Yes.
I'll have the extra guac now at Chipotle. Whatever. Anyway.
That's great.
Yeah, Chipotle.
All right. So I wanted to ask you about something that happened this week. And I know last week we talked about Meghan and Harry. And obviously, you know, Piers Morgan had his thoughts. He had thoughts on the occasion. And one of the... I guess, in theory, the collateral damage of this has been Sharon Osbourne.
Yes. Who saw that coming?
That was so random out of left field.
And on the talk of all places, because as somebody who watches The View, in 148 episodes, I talk about The View all the time. The View has a history of being controversial, but the freaking talk on CBS.
Right, yeah. It would have been even better if it was on The Real. But, yeah, so it's... What I found interesting about it is, and some people were saying, like, oh, that's what you get for when Kelly called out Juliana for making racist comments about Zendaya, which weren't racist. Which I agree, they were not racist. But the one thing that I found,
the whole thing with Juliana and Zendaya and the patchouli
that she says she looked
the
like
one
somebody
who called her out was
Kelly.
Kelly Osbourne.
Yeah,
Kelly Osbourne started that off.
Yeah.
Well, you know why I say that, right? Because Kelly Osbourne on The View
got called out
for when she made that comment about who's going to clean, you know, when Donald Trump was talking bad about Mexicans,
right.
You know, she on The View said, well, who's going to clean your toilets, Donald Trump?
Right.
And I was like, oh, wow. Oh, we went there and came back.
She made the round trip. But no, where I was going with this is, you know, ultimately, again, there's been a whole other can of worms with Sharon Osbourne, but going back to what kind of started this is, you know, there was somebody making comments about Piers Morgan. I think it was Sheryl Underwood. And, you know, Sharon and Piers were friends. Mm-hmm. And what she was essentially saying at that moment was like, look, that's not the guy I know. That's not, you know, he doesn't like her. I disagree with his viewpoint. Did you watch the whole interview? Which? Did
you watch the whole exchange when it was happening?
On the talk? On the talk? No. I saw the recaps afterwards.
Yeah, no, I've seen the whole thing.
Oh, okay. But what I found interesting is, and I actually wanted to put this to you because I feel like I felt kind of bad for her at that moment because I felt like she was just trying to defend a friendship without saying that what he did was right. Because at no point did she say that he was, you know, she's like, look, that's his opinion.
Yeah.
I disagree with him.
Yeah, she even said she didn't agree.
But, you know, that's my friend and this, that, and the other. And I actually started to think, I'm like, I genuinely wanted to pose this question to you. What would you do if you were in her situation? And because you know what, I'm sure I'll slip up at some point and say something that somebody's going to misinterpret.
That's a good question. That's a good question. It's a good topic of conversation. So, well, for those people who don't know, as Ish stated on the talk earlier this week, they were talking about Piers Morgan, how he walked out of Good Morning Britain because of the Harry and Meghan thing, and Sharon and I always forget her name.
Sheryl Underwood.
Kind of had a debate on air because
It was a heated exchange.
It was a
of
heated
sorts.
exchange because
Well, and I say heated in the sense that because nobody was. They weren't
yelling. It
but-
was cordial,
Yeah.
to a certain extent.
Right.
Sharon Osbourne is friends with Pierce Morgan. So to answer your question, here's the thing. At first, I've seen the whole interview a couple of times. I can see where it turned, where it shifted.
Okay.
At first, I didn't agree with Sharon because I think Pierce Morgan is a terrible human being. But she was defending him, and what she was defending was his freedom to say what he said. She even said, I don't agree with what he said. I don't agree with how he said it. I don't think he should have walked out. Right. And I don't think he should have quit. So up to there, she had me. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, that's fine. The problem is that in their conversation, you can see when it turned. That's why I don't know if you watched the whole thing.
No. I've seen
just
clips.
Watched clips,
yeah,
right?
I've seen clips.
I've seen the whole thing. The problem is that Sheryl,
yes,
right? Sheryl tells her, and I'm not saying it verbatim. She tells her, "Well, can you understand how somebody might think that the things he has said about about Meghan, and what happened, to Harry and Meghan, to Meghan
the whole
in particular,
scenario, right.
how he has reacted to that, how somebody might think that he was racist?" And then that's where she became very defensive. Mm-hmm. And she was like, he's not racist. Give me an example. Tell me, educate me. And you could tell she was mad. Mm-hmm. That is where she it went south from there, because she became very defensive. And that's
I don't think what he said was racist. I think he just doesn't like Meghan Markle for whatever reason. And I say that based on I don't know what he has or hasn't said about her.
Well, but
racially.
But the whole thing about what he said and what I think Sheryl was trying to say is, which this I agree with 100%. When somebody is telling you that they are experiencing racism, you need to shut up and listen.
Right.
So if Meghan Markle is telling you, hey, this is my experience, and this is because you know what Meghan Markle, I said it when we talked about it last week. I personally, when she was pregnant, I heard people say, if that prince comes out dark,
watch out.
Watch out. The monarchy is going to lose their shit. Right. Why? Because they have a history of I don't know if the word is racism, but it's tied with
shall we call it protocol?
Yeah. Colonialism and and that whole thing. So they don't necessarily have the most progressive stance
track record
on race relations, right? So when you hear somebody tell you, hey, this is my experience, whether you agree with them or not, just be quiet. And I think that is where he messed up with that, and obviously was saying he didn't believe the mental health issues. That was like the icing on the cake, right? Because you're not in you are not her. You're not in a position to attack her the way that she is. So I think that the argument was, it's not necessarily that he is racist. It's that he is not listening to her, and in a way, he's adding to the whole stigma or argument of white supremacy. Like, oh no, that's not a problem. You're a freaking white English dude. What the hell do you know about racism? What the ins and outs of a black person in the UK? In this case. So I think that is where the argument came from. And in terms of Sharon Osbourne, I think that the first part, she was defending his right to say it. She even distanced herself from what he said. But then I think when she starts telling Sheryl, educate me, tell me what he said, and Sheryl was trying to educate her, and she kept getting more and more irate and more defensive, I think that's where she loses a lot of people. Now, so I hope that answered your question. Now, to look at the totality of the circumstances, the show is currently is on a hiatus for a week because
because they've extended the hiatus.
They're doing an investigation because apparently Sharon Osbourne now is saying that she was set up that these other ladies were told they were going to talk about this.
Yeah, the producers.
And they were prepared with the questions and prepared with the comments, but she wasn't.
Right.
So, if that's true, were they setting her up?
Right.
Then now also in, comments from the past that she had with Leah Remini and Holly Robinson Pete. I remember when this happened.
First season.
That first season, Leah Remini and Holly Robinson Pete were fired for whatever reason from the talk. And there was a rumor that they were fired because Sharon Osbourne had said that there were I think she said too ghetto, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that was a rumor. We don't know if that happened or not. Right. But, maybe it did happen. And now that's coming to resurface with that. So who knows? Mm-hmm. But I'm glad that you asked that, because I'm going to tie that in with something that we did today on our show, on our Instagram.
Okay.
Because in our Instagram today, we a very
benign,
good faith, benign effort. Mm-hmm. We posted something about stopping Asian hate, right? And we got some comments that were off the wall. Of people that are like, no, there isn't Asian hate. Well, how do you know there isn't Asian? Are you Asian? Like, like, what is your reality? Like, people telling you, no, there isn't. It's like, no, actually, there is.
I think it's also very interesting, and I mean, I don't want to cut you off, but bringing that up, it's funny because I was thinking about that this whole week. How I like to think that you and I are pretty. I hate to use the word woke, so I won't. But like, we're pretty progressive. We're pretty open minded. We understand that like, our experiences are not the experiences of other people, and we can't say that doesn't happen and this and that. But I sort of came to the realization that even though, I do know Asian people, right? But I feel like I have a blind spot with Asian and racism to a degree, because I feel like I haven't been surrounded by enough Asian people, and I don't know if this is coming out the right way. I know you'll understand what I'm saying, where it's like, I think we just don't think about
because I think. I think the racism that is I'm not Asian, so I can't
speak to it. Correct.
As to the reality of an Asian person. I am very good friends with several Asian
Yes,
people.
You are.
I think that the racism towards Asian, because when we think racism, we think of the racism towards black people
or Hispanics, because we're Hispanic.
Whether it's rooted in slavery or it's like discrimination, you're not getting a job, or discrimination like, oh, look who came in here, look who walked in through the door, that type of discrimination. Not all forms of discrimination are the same. It comes in very, very different ways. And I think with Asian, for a while, I've actually thought about this for quite some time, for years and years and years, that I'm like, the discrimination towards Asian people are these terrible stereotypes. I mean, just think about the stereotypes think about something as benign as 16 candles. Is it 16 candles? Ducky?
Yes, yeah. Long Duck Wong.
First of all, his name.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
and what happens every time he comes out on screen? The dong.
The gong. Right.
That's sort of awful.
Right.
And like, I think I said in a couple of episodes ago, growing up, one of my favorite scenes of any Disney movie were the Siamese cats.
In
We are Siamese, if you please. I think I told you that I loved that song. But then when I was like of high school age, that I listened to the song now as a young man, I'm like, the song is racist as fuck. Like, like they're completely making an entire. First of all, especially Asians, there's so many
different
subgroups
types
of different types of Asians. There's South Pacific Asians, and there's Eastern Asians, and there's so many spectrums of Asians, right? With different cultures and different languages and just everything different. First of all, you're painting everybody with one stroke, and secondly, you're doing such like stereotypical negative tropes of this people. Yeah. So it's a different form. I
think it's also because
of racism.
I think there's also something to be said for just culturally. Most Asian cultures, I don't want to speak for. Obviously, I'm not speaking for everyone. I'm saying I'm painting with one brush, as you said. But go with me. Is more of a reserved culture. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it, I think,
they may not be as vocal about it.
They may not be as vocal, but on the flip side, because they may not be as vocal, like. If you make fun of a Hispanic person, a black person, whatever, we're not necessarily shrinking violets as cultures, right? So we're gonna be like, "Cojones, ¿qué te pasa a ti?" Type of thing. But they are raised traditionally, I would say, to be more of a reserved, outlook or reserved approach to things. So it may be even just that because they're so reserved, everybody just felt like, we'll make fun of them in every which way.
There may be some truth to that, but I think also if you don't realize something is happening, the wider general audience or society, if you don't know something is happening, you don't know there's a problem. And I think that for a very long time, people didn't believe there was a problem. Again, because I think that especially in the US, you see everything through the scope of like discrimination and racism. Because when you think racism, you think of the racism and
predominantly black people
towards African Americans, right? Yeah. But as we know, there's all types of racism and bigotry and discrimination. Right. And I think that because their discrimination is different,
right?
Maybe
it's maybe not as overt.
Maybe people didn't Maybe people didn't take it as seriously. But you know what? Again, it's history. Because I mean, do you want something as terrible in terms of our own history as the Japanese internment camp? I mean, have you heard the George Yeah,
he did a musical. He wrote a play. I think he wrote the play.
Like how they were taken out of work and school and put in these camps, and then people are like, "Oh, but they weren't tortured," and I'm like, "That's not the point.
That's not the point. You're missing the point, Blanche. Like that's not the point.
The point is that they were taken out of their everyday lives with all.
They were like, "No, you no longer get to live your life now."
Right, all their rights stripped and put in this camp. It doesn't matter if the camp was Club Med. Like the point is,
exactly. I mean, yes, it could have been worse, but that's not the point.
Right, and I think that is an example of, a horrible injustice that was done to a segment of the population that, we're not proud of, but it's like, bleh.
And that got swept under the rug.
That got swept under the rug. It got swept under the rug.
Ever.
And it's terrible. And that wasn't that long ago.
That was World War II.
That was in the 40s.
Yeah.
Right? So there's people still alive that went through that.
Yeah. George Takei.
Exactly.
He's a prime example.
So but that's why it goes back to what I was saying about the post that we put, which in large part goes back to what, the conversation that Sharon was having with Sharon and Sheryl.
It's a little confusing, yeah.
That if somebody, whether it's somebody who's black, somebody who's Latin, somebody who's Asian, somebody who's gay, somebody, whomever is telling you, hey, this is my reality, or this is my community's reality.
My experience.
This is my experience. This is what happened. You need to shut up and you need to listen. Because if you don't, then you are trivializing. Never say that
trivializing
word. That person's experience and that person, what they have gone through. And that's the problem with most of society today. No, that's not a big deal. No, that's not a big deal. Like, with like the guy now, that horrible tragedy that happened this week with the
the three locations.
Yes. He was having a bad day. I don't know about you.
I've had bad days.
I've had some pretty awful days.
You know what I did the last time I had a really bad day? I went and I bought some cookies at Night Owl Cookies, and I bought some comic books at the comic book shop next door, and I just ate my feelings.
Remember back of those $17?
Right, that was a bad day.
I'll go to McDonald's and buy 17 cheeseburgers.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, that's how you handle a bad day.
A bad day, right?
Yeah.
And
trust me, ganas no me han faltado de agarrar aquí por el pescuezo y ahorcarlo.
That kid went to 3 Asian parlors, right? So even with that,
he didn't go to a massage envy,
right? So even with that, it's like people saying, "Oh no, he didn't mean to go out." I mean, why are you defending this? Like, what?
That's the part that kills me, because it's like, you know what? Okay, fair. Let's say it wasn't racially motivated, right? Like, let's say he went on a killing spree. At the end of the day, you're still trying to defend a murderer.
Yeah.
Like, that's the bottom line here, kids. Like, you shouldn't, like, you just look like an asshole because you're the one who's saying there being like, well, no, but I mean, he killed them, but he didn't kill them because it's like, who cares?
Right.
He's a murderer.
No, he didn't. Right, he killed them, but he didn't kill them. There's no hate crime against Asians, right? Because he went to 3 Asian parlors that were not even close by.
They weren't even like right next to each other.
Right. So
he went out of his way.
So this was just a really tragic coincidence. Like,
yeah.
Are you serious? Like, really? But that, and again, to tie it all together before we move to our interview, that is what I think with the whole Pierce Morgan thing, and then to an extent Sharon Osbourne, I think that's what rubbed people the wrong way. If you don't like Meghan Markle, don't like Meghan Markle. If you think she's terrible to the British monarchy, that's your opinion. But when she tells you that as a biracial person and as a black person or a woman of color, this is what she has gone through and this is her experience, well, guess what, Pierce Morgan? You're not a black woman. So shut the F up. So, and then to Sharon Osbourne, when, Sheryl is telling Sharon, hey, but, this is what our experience has been. And this is how him defending that and attacking her can be, how it could be seen. Cállate. That's why the first part of the interview, when she first was speaking, okay, look, she didn't agree with what he said. She's defending her friend. But then it turned. And that's the part that it's like, she shouldn't have gone there. She should have just shut up and been like, yeah, he said it was very inappropriate and he shouldn't have said that. And I don't agree with it. I'm his friend. I'll always be his friend. I support him, but I don't stand by what he said. And yeah, Sheryl, what he said can be deemed, racist, insensitive.
I don't think it was, but I see how you could interpret it that way.
Yeah, like insensitive, whatever. And that's it. It would have been done. They would have moved on to the next subject. But instead, it turned into what it turned into. So
yes. Well, speaking of moving on to the next subject, our interview today is actually somebody
literally.
Our interview today is with someone who actually can relate to our experiences because he is not only a homegrown Miami boy, but he's a homegrown Miami boy from, as he says in the interview, Westcheste. Today we are talking with Danny Pino, who is from Mayans MC, which actually just started this week, 3rd season. I haven't seen the new season yet, but season 2 was insane. And also from Law & Order SVU, and anybody who knows me knows how much of a Law & Order fan I am. So
I feel that Law & Order SVU, after being on the air for so many years,
20-something years,
and having so many episodes, and I feel that they're hardcore viewers like you, isn't there some type of certification in like forensic special victims unit that you can get by what? I mean, look, there's I'm getting an online certification now, and it's only been 3 months. Like,
I've been watching this for like 20 years. Yeah,
So
I gotta get something. I should get something.
Isn't there I mean, I'm pretty sure that you and a lot of people that are hardcore fans, you pretty much have the qualifications, at least entry level, to work in a forensic.
I'm pretty sure
special victims unit.
I'm pretty sure
at least entry level.
Like taking notes or something.
Yeah, entry level, whatever position that
filing.
is.
I'll go see. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying.
Well, I didn't ask that hard question of Danny, but so we talked about Mayans, we talked about SVU, and we obviously talked about growing up in Miami. So here's our interview with Danny Pino.
All right, mi gente. So as we told you, this week our guest is somebody who, if you listen to the show, you know we're excited about because he's actually been one of our dream guests since we started this little dog and pony show about 4 years ago. So it is with my immense honor that I get to welcome to Pero Let Me Tell You from Mayans, Law & Order SVU, One Day at a Time. I mean, he even played Desi Arnaz, Danny Pino. So thank you so much for joining us, man.
Nah, Ish, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for having me on. I mean, Pero Let Me Tell You is usually the way I start every sentence in my life. So it's great to be here.
It's like it was calling you in, the beacon, right? The homing beacon.
Exactly. It's like I'm finally back home.
Yeah. Well, speaking of home, I just have to say before we start talking about Mayans, heard you on a podcast interview with Jack Rico a couple weeks back, or maybe a couple months back. Time has no meaning anymore with COVID. And you had a place in my heart already, but he asked where you were from. And you replied with the right answer. You didn't say Westchester. You didn't say Miami. You said
Westcheste.
Westcheste, of course, dude. He's a homegrown boy.
No, man. If I said Westchester, nobody in Westcheste would understand where I was. I was like, no, man. You got to kind of keep it real.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think all of you guys do that on Mayans. There is, talk about a segue, right? But one of the things that I love genuinely watching you guys is just knowing that it's like possibly the largest all Latino cast I've seen probably ever on TV. Correct me if I'm wrong. But what does it feel like to be part of that? It's such a huge like cross culture, but everybody at the end is a Latino,
Yeah, I think your segue was actually kind of apt because, to acknowledge where you're from and to say it the way that, that you would say it, right? Westcheste, to keep it real, it shows a certain amount of pride, right? And I'm certainly incredibly proud to be from Westcheste and to be from, to be, 305 till I die, and that's just me. And the authenticity of who I am is mirrored exponentially through our cast. Mm-hmm. Everybody is proud of who they are and the heritage that they carry. And I think that authenticity permeates through the show, whether it's through the writing, whether it's through how the show is shot, to the performances that you see depicted from episode to episode. So that authenticity is important from the creators throughout the cast and into the crew.
Yeah, and it's interesting for me because I know one of your castmates is Tony Plana, or was Tony Plana,
yeah.
And it's funny that you say that because I think you and I, we come from the same place, we're about the same age, and he's actually one of the first Latinos I remember seeing on TV. And I can pinpoint the exact moment. It was an episode of The Golden Girls, and he wasn't playing a Latino. He wasn't outwardly called out. But when I saw him, I heard him. I was like, I know that guy. Like I don't know him, but I know him. And I think that's what's coming through with Mayans. It's like you're saying, we know these people because there's a genuine voice there that you can't fake.
And then I think you put your finger on something else, saying that Mayans is unique in that, there is so much, Latinx representation on screen, to watch The Golden Girls and to realize that there's somebody on screen that may or may not be playing, somebody of Latin heritage, but you recognize something about that person or that character within yourself. I think that's incredibly important. It's a visceral experience when you're watching that, right? When I was growing up to watch Desi Arnaz,
one of my personal heroes, by the way. So thank you for that portrayal.
One of mine too. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. But for me, there weren't any real artists in my family. I mean, people were working class and they got jobs so that they could survive and feed their families. But we didn't really have musicians or actors or, painters, visual artists in our family. So I was kind of the outlier, but for me to see an actor, Desi Arnaz, portray Ricky Ricardo, a Cuban character on screen, to me that meant that it was possible.
Yeah.
Right. So hopefully with Mayans, there's a generation of artists growing up who can see, the men and women on our show and realize that not only is it possible to be in the cast, but there are, creatives, the showrunner, the writing staff, the directors. There are multiple opportunities, and it is possible for them to have a life within the arts.
Yeah, no, and that's so important. I think you hit something on the head. I mean, again, I'm making the assumption we had similar upbringings, right? Westcheste boys, Cuban American, where to think that you're going to be un artista, whatever that winds up being, and make a living out of it. It's not necessarily that it's squashed as a dream, but it's kind of like sí, pero tú tienes que estudiar, like you have to have a backup plan. Tú sabes.
Te vas a morir de hambre.
Right, exactly.
Te vas a morir de hambre.
Exactly.
Like
Exactly. So it's very important, that we have that example out there for people to look at and say like, no me voy a morir de hambre. Like it's possible. Not only can I do it, but I may not necessarily be just the only one going out for that role or that representation, element. Like there's an opportunity for more than one of us to have that exposure and to have that presence.
Yeah, but even further than that, I think that it is our responsibility to feel the agency to tell our own stories.
Absolutely.
To not have somebody outside of our experience try to tell us how it is our lives should be depicted.
Yeah, it's funny because before the interview officially started, we were talking, about the name of the show, and that's how you start every conversation. And we always talk about Spanglish, and people don't realize that there is a cadence to it. And to your point, most of the times when you see it or hear it, and it's not written by someone who speaks Spanish and English interchangeably, it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, it's so true, and specifically on Mayans, what's challenging for me is, being born and raised in Miami to, Cuban parents around a predominantly Cuban culture, to play a Mexican character. I'm incredibly fixated, almost obsessed with when I do have a scene in Spanish, to pick the brain of our dialect coach and truly try and get as much either of a neutral dialect or a sprinkle of what would be a nuance of a certain Mexican dialect. I mean, there's not one Mexican dialect, right, just like there's not one American dialect, just like there's not one Cuban dialect. But it's important for me to try and find that authenticity within Miguel Galindo. Because I know when I watch people who are supposed to be playing Cubans, I'm like, that dude's not Cuban.
It's funny you say that, because I was like, I noticed that you didn't, you actually pronounced all your S's when you're speaking in Spanish. I was like, okay, all right. He's not just, I speak Spanish. It's like, no, he's paying attention, and I'd expect nothing less from you, man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. No, I think it's important that you put in the work and that you try and, like I said originally, try and keep and preserve a lot of that authenticity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, speaking of Miguel, all right, I have to tell you straight up, after watching you, on Law and Order, and now you're switching over to this guy. I mean, Miguel is tremendo hijo puta. I'm just gonna say it like that, in the best way possible. How was that switch for you? Because I feel like traditionally you've played the good guys. I mean, the gruff guy, but the good guys, right? Like the hero, as it were. What was it like to kind of flip that switch?
Man, I gotta say, it hurt a little bit to hear Miguel referred to as tremendo hijo puta, but I get what you're saying.
I mean that in the lovingest way possible, as you know.
I feel you. Man, Miguel is a complicated character, and that is all you can hope for and pray for as an actor. Right. Is to get a character, to be able to play a character, to embody somebody who has tremendous duality. Somebody who is obviously capable of horrific violence, but is a loving family man and tries to prioritize his family above all else. Sometimes at his own expense. Right. And so to be able to play within those margins, it's something that's incredibly attractive to me, and to play a police officer for the number of years I played a police officer on Cold Case and on SVU. I was blessed with, great writing on both of those shows, and they were sort of mining similar territory with the character where, sometimes he would, show a darker side, right, for a police officer. And so I think that always searching for that gray area, and having writers understand that that's something that I wanted. I wanted that challenge. I wanted to push the boundaries of what those characters would do. I think that's something that Mayans does incredibly well.
Absolutely.
You pose somebody who is the head of a cartel, and certainly we're not trying, and the writers aren't trying to sympathize with him. He does horrific things, and it would be absurd to depict a character who's the head of a cartel who you're trying to elevate, right? Yeah. Instead, I think it's more trying to be as authentic, to use a word we've used multiple times, to try to understand what his psychology would be and to see how truly horrific his life is and how what he kind of what he brings on other people comes back to him.
Right.
And how it is he tries to maneuver that.
Yeah, it's not just some guy, mustache twirling with a woman on the train tracks type. You got to go beyond that.
No, besides that, it's not. He's also not where Miguel doesn't. And I don't think the show does glamorize that violence. There's always a cost. There's always a cost to it, right? And I think that I think again grounds the show.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I know we've got season 3 coming up. Season 3 starts. It's actually this month, March. I again
March
have
16th.
No concept of time anymore. I'm like, I don't know. It's 2021ish.
It's 2021.
Okay, all right. Step 1.
I got you, man.
What year is it? Obviously there was a hell of a cliffhanger. Season 2 with Miguel and his mother, played by Ada Maris, who again I've loved her since the sitcom Nurses way back in the 90s, so it's always nice to see her pop up. Where do we find Miguel when season 3 comes back? Is it like literally the next day, or has time passed, or how much can you or can you not share? Let me preface it that way.
I could share a little bit. Ada Maris and Tony Plana are married in real life.
I just found that out like this week.
And I'm so happy that you brought up Tony Plana. I'm so happy that you brought up Ada because they're exceptional artists, and I try and use every opportunity I can to shine a light on how lucky I am to have worked with them and to work with them. I just feel like the more talented actors you're surrounded with, it just elevates everybody. And they're certainly one of the actors who elevate any scene that they're in. But yeah, in last season, it ends with Miguel's mother, Dita, played by Ada. Miguel finds her dead by an apparent suicide. And so season 3 begins with Miguel having to deal with that and all that comes along with trying to unwrap what would bring his mother to do that, and what, if any, anything he would have been able to prevent that from happening. He's searching his guilt,
right?
And what he could have done to stop his mother from taking that action. And so it's really a downward spiral for Miguel. You start seeing him in a way that we haven't seen him in the past. Miguel's so self-assured and self-confident, somebody who would walk into a room and own it, somebody who, seemingly had all the power, which is really what our show is about. I mean, at the end of the day, the show is about, who has the power, who wants it, how are they going to get it, how are they going to, how are they going to keep it?
Yeah, keep it, because getting it is one thing, keeping it's another.
Keeping it is a whole other thing. And so I think Miguel starts to for lack of a better word, he begins to implode, trying to figure out who he is now without his mother, and who's responsible for what happened. And so it becomes a really, especially the first 2 episodes, very introspective for Miguel. And he's kind of unmoored. He's trying to figure out who he is and where he is in the world.
Right. No, I mean, that makes sense after going through something like that. I mean, I would be surprised if he wasn't, because I don't care how powerful you are, us Latino men, it's all about our mom at the end of the day. So it's, it's our rock. So I think.
Yeah. I mean, oftentimes, they serve as, our touchstone.
Yeah.
The person we go back to who gives us support, who gives us, reassurance and confidence. And without that, and with, the seeming deterioration of Miguel's marriage, it's, he's left isolated.
Yeah, no, for sure. So again, it's season 3 is coming back March 16th on FX.
March 16th
or
on FX at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
Eastern
10 o'clock.
and Pacific.
Easter. Para que no haya confusión, you guys, there's no, you got all the time frames there. You can watch it on Hulu the next day. I want to thank you, Danny, for taking the time, obviously, to chat with us. But before I let you go, I also want to thank you for something very specific that I would kick myself if I didn't tell you this. During your time on SVU, which I call Law and Order SVU, the Cuban years, because it was you and Raul Esparza, there was one incident, and I watch things mostly on like streaming, like on demand, so I can watch it at my own leisure. There was one episode, and I'm not going to remember the exact phrasing, but there was an episode that it was you and Raul in a scene, and you were either standing in front of an elevator or in an elevator, about to get something about an elevator. And you guys had just some type of like friction, right? An argument or a conflict. And you replied to him in Spanish, in perfect Cuban Miami, like something to the effect of like, no te tire donde no das pie, or something like that. Mm-hmm. I rewound that scene. It was maybe 3 seconds, if anything. I rewound that scene so many times and rewatched it because for me, there was a sense of pride in watching the two of you portray, Cuban American characters on this primetime, long-running show, and just speaking in a very like Cuban way. You know what I mean? It wasn't neutral. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to try to be Spanish, quote unquote. It's like, no, your culture came through, and knowing that you said it, but I know he understood it, and I know he understood it the way it needed to be understood. It was just, it gave me the feels in a weird way. So I just wanted to kind of thank you for that, because that's just one of those things I will never forget.
I appreciate that, Ish, man. Look, I think, working with Raul, listen, he's one of those actors who elevates any scene he's in too. He's a phenomenal talent, not only on screen but on stage. I mean, he's an incredible actor, an incredible singer, just a fantastic performer. And I remember actually the scene that you're talking about, because we would do a read through for every episode. And we sat down to do this read through, and the Spanish was fine, but it wasn't our two characters. And so I remember Warren Light, who was the showrunner at the time, just had Raul and I sit down and was like, what do you think you would say here? And then he would say, his Cuban mess there, and I was like, I would respond with this, right? And so the script coordinator was there writing it down, and then Raul and I were like, we'll write it down. We'll write it down. So we coordinated what that dialogue would be, and thankfully Warren was very open to that, again, authenticity of what these two characters were. And I know that Raul feels the same way I do. I feel incredibly honored and satisfied with, being able to play these, those two characters, being able to play, Nick Amaro, a Cuban character on national television, and have him actually speak in Spanish the way that a Cuban would speak, and so that will always be something I'm, incredibly happy about, and something I look back with a lot of satisfaction, So, and to hear you say that, I think Raul responded back to me something like "No te equivoques conmigo."
Like algo así,
right?
Yeah.
No te equivoques conmigo, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, I was like, dude, we might as well be at like La Carreta having un cafecito, right?
It's all that was missing, really. It was just like the cafecito. That's it. It was,
Exactly. But yeah, no, that is definitely. I'm incredibly grateful for the experience I had those 4 years at SVU, for a lot of reasons. But that is definitely one of them. Being able to work with Raul and to bring those characters out in like a 3-dimensional way and represent, I think, a community that is largely underrepresented. So.
Yeah, well, you know what? As part of the community, again, I say thank you and job well done, man. Not just for what you do on screen, but just you carry it through. Like, there's always a sense of pride in where you come from and where you're going. And you know what? That's something that we always look to spotlight here. And if it happens to be a guy from Westcheste like us, all the better, right? All the better. It's
No doubt, bro. I'll see you at Sedanos, man.
all right. Bueno, cuando quiera. All right. Oh yeah. Again, man. Thank you so much. Cuídate.
Thanks, Ish. Igualmente.
All right. Pero let me tell you.
And we're back.
Yes. So I know that, unfortunately you weren't able to make the interview, but when he gave me that little behind the scenes tidbit on my favorite SVU scene, like after I told him my favorite scene between him and Raúl Esparza, and then he gave me that little behind the scenes tidbit, I was like, I felt, I don't know, there was just some it was like a little happy place in my heart. It was just great.
I think that now, because you've interviewed him and your BFFs, and
It's true.
You
It's
have
true.
his contact info. I think you should talk to him about the certification we talked about.
I'm gonna see about it because
I'm sure he knows somebody who can make it happen.
Marishka could probably make it happen.
Yeah, if anybody can make it, it's her.
It's Marishka. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, she has a lot of clout there. She can speak. It's like, listen, if Kaiser University is giving degrees online, like, why can NBC
just give the forensic thing. It's funny
Yeah.
because the other day, I don't know why it came up. Jose and I were watching some movie or something, and I was like, oh, that's a rookie mistake. Like, people were escaping the law, but I'm like, that's a rookie mistake. You have to do this and da. And Jose was looking at me. He's like, why do you know all this? And I'm like, because I watch a lot of Law and Order, all 3 versions.
Hello.
And also, you need to start watching because I already told them, like, if someday we have to go on the run, you're so underprepared, and I'm gonna have to carry both of us. And you know what? Eventually, I'm just gonna have to cut ties.
Yeah, it's in your best interest to do so.
Yeah, like, okay, if you have to go on the run, what's the first thing you have to do?
Like, I don't want to be found.
Correct.
Have cash on hand so they don't see my credit cards.
Okay, that's one of the first ones. What's that, like? It's that and something else are like tied for first.
Make sure my car doesn't have a GPS.
Okay,
and have
it's related to that. It's basically you get rid of your cell phone and you buy a prepaid cell.
right, burner.
Exactly.
Right.
See,
Hello.
Logistics, people.
Exactly. You should have a certification. So anyway, let's get to our last sodas. I have a bit of a interesting last soda.
Okay.
Today. So my last soda goes to Glenna Milberg.
Oh, from
Yes.
CBS4?
No, it's Channel 10, WPLG 10.
Sorry about that. Sorry,
Glenna.
Glenna.
Actually, Glenna Milberg, she's been actually a reporter, journalist
for a while.
in South Florida. I think since like the early 90s. She used to be in Channel 7. That's where I knew her from. But now she
Damn, I couldn't even get that right.
She is in Channel 10, and she hosts
With our boy Louis.
and Michael Putney. And I have to tell you that Glenna Milberg and Michael Putney, it's obviously a local show. Yeah. Their caliber in terms of talking about politics, both national and local, I mean, it's
really good.
They are up there with like Meet the Press. They're very they're very intelligent, very well prepared. They ask really tough questions. Mm-hmm. Like, they're great. So
Why Glenna this week?
Glenna Milberg and some reporters also from the Herald. Mm-hmm. For some time now, have been sort of investigating what happened in one of our local races here in South Florida, and I'll explain. So one of the local races down here for the Florida House of Representatives, during the election now in November, one of the incumbent was... we call him JJR, but it was Jose Rodriguez.
Right.
Okay?
Jose Javier Rodriguez.
Jose Javier Rodriguez, which is actually the brother of Tony Rodriguez, yes, who is our friend from Spanish Aquí Presents. Yes. Right? Small world, right?
Right.
And as many of you know, I worked the elections. In the last election cycle, I was a field organizer for the Miami-Dade Democratic Party. One of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. So, we got to know the campaigns and who was running on both sides pretty well. And there was, in his campaign, in the campaign for this seat of the Florida House, there was JJR, again, Jose Javier Rodriguez, who was the incumbent, so he was running for re-election against Ileana Garcia, who was a Republican. But then there was also a third candidate called Alex Rodriguez. So they had the same last name.
Not that Alex Rodriguez.
No, not A-Rod.
No.
Not Jennifer.
Not
J-Lo's.
Not J-Lo's.
Who they've been in the news this week. So they the three of them were running for the same spot. Now, during the campaign, we never saw this Alex Rodriguez. Nobody knew who he was. Everybody was questioning who he was. And it's like, this is really weird. Like, who is this guy?
De donde salió?
De donde salió? You know, and he has the same last name as JJR.
Right.
You know, it's like, who is this guy? He didn't even have signs, like nothing. He was simply on the ballot.
He was a candidate in name only.
Right. On the ballot. And that was really weird. Like me, I remember me and my group, we'd be like, what is going on there? Right. And we don't have the experience that a lot of other people did.
Right.
So Glenna Milberg and some reporters from the Herald started pointing the dots.
Connecting
the dots, I mean. And there was something off. So this seat goes, Ileana Garcia wins.
Right.
So she beats
by a slim margin.
Jose Rodriguez. 36 votes.
Yeah.
There was a recount.
Yep.
36 votes. 36 votes out of tens of thousands of votes.
Right.
36 votes. So they start putting two and two together, and then the dots
start to form,
leading to Frank Artiles,
yes,
who is a former House member as well and is a Republican. So he was actually, his home was raided today.
Yep.
And he was arrested because Frank Artiles apparently paid to have this Alex Rodriguez run so they can confuse
with the goal of
confusing voters into voting for him, for this Alex Rodriguez, to take votes away from Jose Rodriguez. And I keep calling him JJR. And
it rolls off the tongue.
And he got like 6,600 votes.
Yeah, he got like a lot of votes.
Yeah. This, you know,
this entity.
Right.
Yeah.
He got like 6,600 votes, which would have made all the difference. Right. And the Alex Rodriguez that ran was arrested as well. And he already threw Frank Artiles under the bus.
Well, yeah, you always want to be the first one to make a deal.
Right.
Again, Law and Order.
Right. He already threw him under the bus and said, yes, he came to me and offered me $45,000 pre-election and I think $50,000 post-election.
Half up front, and half after.
So now they're like, now the investigation is like, well, where did that money come from? But anyway, the point why I'm giving Glenna Milberg a last soda, and this is our Pero Politica corner of the day, is because at the end of the day, good journalism is a hallmark of democracy.
That's true.
Whether you like it or not. And that was a hallmark of democracy that was being attacked in the last 4 or 5 years. That's not to say that
there's good journalists, there's bad journalists.
That's not to say that it's perfect. That's not to say that there isn't a bias. But journalism is crucial to a democracy. And here we clearly showed, and there is evidence to show that this Republican guy did what he did to make sure that the Democrat didn't win. So, to the Florida GOP, let's talk about election fraud, shall we? Let me know. Send me an email at peroletmepodcast.
No, don't send him because
gmail.com.
He never reads the emails. It's going to be me.
Let me know if Florida GOP, after knowing this case and reading this case, if you want to talk about election fraud, we'll talk about it in the next episode next week. I'll be more than happy to sit down and talk to you about election fraud in this specific election.
It was not about the voters.
Where there was evidence. There's a lot of evidence.
It was not voter fraud. It was election fraud.
So Glenna Milberg, you got my last soda.
Well, that's good.
To Glenna, to journalism.
And her team of journalists.
To Glenna, to her team of journalists, to democracy. See? The truth always comes out.
If it does.
That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, well, okay.
And that is the Pero Politica corner of the day that so many people have asked that we have a spin-off of.
He managed to blend two things together. He's like making mashups now. Mm-hmm. So mine is not politically centric, but it's community centric. My last vote actually goes to Miami Community Fridge. Have you heard of them?
I have actually.
You have? I hadn't heard about them until maybe a couple weeks back. So for those who don't know, and they are on Instagram as Miami Community Fridge, well, all one word. They're a nonprofit organization that has essentially set up a bunch of refrigerators in some underserved areas throughout the city. And they're actually in the process of, I think, setting up a few more in the Hialeah area. And they depend solely on stocking the fridge for those who are in need for the community. So basically, you can go to their website. You can find out where they have a fridge. You can go and you can either stock things, and they have a whole laundry list of what they need and what they don't, and how what they accept and what they don't. You can stock the fridge, and people who are in need, people who are homeless or going through a rough time, can just go there and stock up. They also have pantry items and things like that. So I just thought it was interesting. It's the type of thing that I didn't even know existed in our community, but I think it's a little bit of I don't want to say a leftover, leftovers in the fridge, a carryover from what we had last year. And I don't know how long they've been around, where, we all kind of started to think about other people and who's necesitado. And I think little things like that, if you're in the area, if you're feeling so inclined, just grab a couple. Actually, you can even go to the Dollar Tree, like we were just saying earlier. You go to Dollar Tree, you can go to their grocery aisle, grab a couple things, and just swing by one of the fridges and help keep it stocked. And what's just $10 for us is a lot for someone else out there. So Miami Community Fridge,
very nice. And you can put some sodas in there.
You can put sodas in there as well.
So very nice. So Glenna Milberg and Miami Community Fridge.
Yes,
very nice. So on that note, we hope everybody has a great weekend. Thank you so much, everybody. That was episode 148. We hope you listened, laughed, and learned. And remember to grab your pastelito, your croqueta, and your cafecito. And we'll all see you next time.
That's right,
Thank you so much,
gente.
everybody. Have a great
Cuídense.
weekend.
Bye.
Enjoy that stimulus money.
That's right. Spend it, baby. Woo!
Pero Let Me Tell You is co-hosted by Darian Borges and Ismaeliano, produced by Ismaeliano, and our theme, Pero Let Me Tell You Freestyle, is composed by Michael Angelo Lomlaplex, the official gay guy. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes.